Good morning, everyone. This is Curtis Hawks over at Insurance Agency Marketing Services. And we are doing a call today on a very hot topic. I think a lot of people are a little surprised that we're talking about this, but we are talking about the implementation of the DOL rule that goes into effect today. The Department of Labor did formally announce on Friday last week that they are not going to delay the rule. And so today what we're going to be talking about is what does that mean? How does it work? How to make sure that you are compliant when you're transacting business. So we've got a lot of ground to cover over the course of today's conversation. Before we get into that, though, I did want to touch on some of the additional ways that IMS is here to help support your business. One of those is through the use of our new producer builders. If you're a new agent, I know we've got a mix of advisors on the call today, but if you're a new advisor to us, when you start producing business with us, you can see on the screen here, there are a variety of ways that we can help partner with your business to get in front of more prospects or help make doing business easier. And so I would encourage you to visit our website, also reach out and speak with the sales director over here. They can chat with you about that as well. One of the other things that I would mention as well is one of the core themes with IMS is customization of services. And so if you've got something that you're currently doing that you don't see up on this screen that's working well for you, reach out and talk to a sales director and chat with them about that. And they can work with you to customize the plan with that. In addition to that, with our IMS Business Builders, we've got our Referral Producer program. For those of you that are currently working with us and like our service, if you've got an agent or advisor that maybe isn't quite happy where they're at or is looking for help to grow their business, our Referral Producer program is a great program. In fact, it's some of the biggest checks that we cut. But what you get is when the agent initially gets contracted, you get a $50 bonus. On top of that, when they place their first piece of business, you get an additional $100 bonus. And then on an ongoing basis, you get checks on a quarterly basis based off of their production. You don't have to do any service work. You don't have to do anything. We take care of all the service and make sure that they're happy and their business is growing. In addition to that, we have our marketing reimbursement program. And this is just really a great way to double the size of your advertising budget. It covers annuities, single premium life insurance, as well as traditional life insurance business on target premium. But you can see there that as you're producing business with us, you get additional marketing dollars that you can use for marketing your practice. In addition to that, I have to talk about back office support. Now, I know that traditionally everybody says they've got great service. And I think we've got great service. But I think service has really been highlighted over the course of the last year as we've had carriers have staff go remote, and the pandemic's obviously presented a number of challenges. And so having the right team of people supporting your business, making sure business gets pushed through, helping you with case design, contracting, making sure you've got all the things that you need is critically important. It's really highlighted the importance of having a good back office team, which we have here over at IMS. In addition to that, if you've been watching us at all, you've seen that we spend a lot of time talking about digital marketing and transacting business digitally. E-applications are a big part of that. And so with our website, we do integrate with Firelight, we do integrate with iPipeline, because we know it's not easy to necessarily sit down with everybody face-to-face like we used to. And so if you haven't gotten registered for that, or if you have questions, reach out, talk to a sales director over here. They're happy to answer any questions that you might have. But we have built out a very robust platform to help you transact business no matter where you're at. In addition to that, we've got our creative marketing solutions. And I think creative really is the key word. A lot of reps were doing business pre-COVID and might have their one main core marketing activity that they do. And when the pandemic happened, one of the things that we saw change is that you can't just rely on the same old marketing strategies. You've got to kind of customize that. Every state, every local geographic area is a little bit different. And so one of the things that we had to do was get more creative with our agents on how do we help them generate a consistent flow of prospects. And one of the ways that we do that is through a marketing analysis. And so what we'll actually do is we'll go in, sit down with that advisor, and identify what their goals are, what their marketing assets are, what their target demographic is, and we'll put together a customized marketing plan for them to help figure out what is the optimal way to generate a consistent flow of prospects. In fact, it's a complimentary process that we offer, and so I'm going to launch a poll here real quick. If you're interested in getting a complimentary marketing analysis, go ahead and just check yes or no, and we'll have a sales director reach out to you to get that scheduled. Again, the process is we'll kind of do a needs analysis with you on your business, and then that goes over to our creative team. They'll go through, they'll pull population densities. They'll come back and tell you, if your ideal prospect is this, here's how many people match that demographic in your local area. And then we'll put together the right combination of marketing strategies to help you get in front of that target demographic and have a good path forward on how to generate a consistent flow of prospects. So I think we've got just about everybody out. So let me go ahead and close that down real quick. Next up, the IMS website. Again, it is a wealth of resources. So again, we know that a lot of advisors are having to transact business digitally. All the tools that you're going to need to be able to do that are on the IMS website, from running life and annuity quotes to getting rates, to accessing forms, to doing e-applications. It's all there. Another thing that I want to point out is our sales resource library. The ability to show people presentations that articulate a variety of concepts and ideas, whether big or small, is critically important. And we literally have hundreds of different point of sale pieces on our websites, whether you're talking about IRAs and 401ks or traditional life insurance or SPL, Roth IRAs, business plans. We even have information on trust planning on there. So I would encourage you to make sure you take a look at that if you haven't yet, because it really is a great resource. And again, they're all things that you can save via PDF, download off of our site, and send out or use in your presentations. Last, but certainly not least, I have to mention our upcoming Top Producer Summit. We just announced our trip. It's going to be in August of 2022, and it really is an experience of a lifetime. We're going to be doing a Mediterranean cruise. As you can see on here, we've got several ports we're going to be visiting, from Rome to Venice and everywhere in between, and all very, very high end. Every single agent that qualifies is going to be on concierge level cabins. They're going to have a view on the veranda, but it really is just an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing experience of a lifetime. Qualification has started, runs through June 30th of next year, so there's ample time to make sure that you qualify for this. 4.5 million points to qualify. What I would encourage you to do is either go to imsinc.com, or what's even better is reach out, talk to a sales director over here. They can get you all the details on how you qualify, how it works. But we're really excited about this. We're really excited about getting to spend time with everybody, and it's just going to be an absolutely amazing trip. So with that, let's get over to the main part of what we're talking about, which is the DOL Fiduciary Rule update. With us today is Chris Conroy. He is the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of IMS. If you haven't had a chance to speak with him yet, he's an amazing resource, an amazing asset to IMS. He's got over 24 years of experience in this business, working at the carrier level, the IMO level, and working with thousands of advisors throughout the country. In addition to that, he's a former chair with the National Association for Fixed Annuities. So he's here. He's going to break this whole thing down for us and make sure that everyone on this call has all the tools they need to be able to stay compliant and transact business. So Chris, I really appreciate you taking some time with us today.
Thank you, Curtis. I certainly appreciate being here with everybody. And boy, we got a lot of people interested. I think we had 750 register for this event with just a couple days of promoting it. So we know this is a hugely important topic, right, Curtis? I mean, I don't know if we've seen that much response, and we're pleased to talk about it today. And we really are kind of first mover on this. Frankly, we don't see any other of our competitors or carriers talking about it. Today is compliance date, as we found out, and pleased to talk about it, kind of give you the nuts and bolts today and walk through it. If you do have specific questions, just know that you can reach out to your sales director here, and we'll be following up with you at the end of the program and talking to you about the compliance form we're going to provide to you and address any questions. So just know that we will. I think you can chat a question here, but we'll get those when we follow up with our sales directors. So, what we have today to talk about is the Department of Labor's Fiduciary Rule, which candidly is a complex rule, a couple hundred pages long, which is about as long as the prior administration's rule under Obama. It is fairly confusing. It's confusing how it was released and kind of what it means. And now we have the third White House administration, Biden, who last Friday, we'll show you, said that they would confirm the rule would go through after the Trump team had put it into the books back in December. So today we're going to cover the nuts and bolts and really try to make it as simple as we can and put the compliance steps out there for you so you know what you need to do. Know that this affects all qualified money, IRAs included. So if you're working with qualified money and you are a salesperson of whatever type, insurance only, rep, advisor, you're working with qualified annuity and life insurance money, then you are covered. And that compliance date per that rule to comply with it is today. So this is a fluid topic is the other thing I'd make the point of, which is it's very possible the Department of Labor will offer some more guidance. We will be responding to that. We already have some additional programs set up. We fully expect the carriers are also going to have their own compliance regime, which could include some of the stuff we're going to show you today. And if you're with a broker dealer or an RIA or a bank that supervises you in some capacity, they may have their own type of compliance plans, and we'll share a little bit about that. So today's program, while I'm general counsel for IAMS, is not intended as legal advice. We will provide some education information, a sample form that we encourage you to take a look at, but not intended as legal advice. So let's move on to the next slide there, Curtis. I guess the first thing we want to say is, at IAMS, we're here, we got your back. We're your advocate. We're very tied in with the National Association for Fixed Annuities. I just served my term as chairman, former chairman of their Government Legal Affairs Committee, and just know we got your back. We're out there fighting for the independent advisors all around the country, whether you're insurance only, rep, or investment advisor. We're here to serve you with regard to annuities and life insurance senior product needs. And we're tied into NAFA being probably the most important trade, but also other things such as the IRI, ACLI, SIFMA, et cetera. So this rule is really kind of a rule that's never died. It feels, I wrote a newsletter article about this calling it feels like a kind of zombie apocalypse, Curtis, which is this thing never seems to die. It originally started as a proposal in 2010, no doubt, in 2010, 11 years ago. Another proposal came out in 2015. A final version was in 2016. Industry sued, and IAMS was a part of that effort that successfully unwound this rule. Trump ultimately prevailed and was sworn in 2017 and delayed parts of that rule, which was the more onerous best interest contract provision. 2018, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down that rule, and we kind of had this limbo temporary enforcement world. And then Trump came forward, his administration in 2010, and had proposal really 3. This is 10 years after the first iteration, and that was finalized and put in the Federal Register. We'll show you just 2 months ago. And now we have a Biden administration that took in, and I think it surprised everyone that folks that are reading any trade journals certainly said, wow, this rule is going to get bounced. The new administration is going to unwind it, maybe put some more teeth into it, and that's not what happened per the we'll show you on Friday. So move on to the next slide there, Curtis. The left slide there, that is what was put in the Federal Register on December 18th. So this is the first page of about a 200-page rule. And then there's an article there from National Law Reviews talking about, well, is it going to remain? And I think everybody handicapped that it would probably just die on the vine. There'd be a delay, and then there'd ultimately be pulled and reproposed, et cetera, be back into year 11 of the saga. So that kind of caught everybody by surprise. Now we here at IAMS, we're closely watching this and kind of through our contacts in DC, had speculated that it might actually stay on the books, and so that's what allowed us to prepare the compliance information we're going to share today. So moving on to the next slide there, Curtis. Another couple articles. This was the actual release, came last Friday from the Department of Labor, their press release, which says that it will go into effect on February 16th. Indeed, you've seen a lot of articles. Here's one from Investment News that the DOL will let the Trump-era Fiduciary Rule stand, and went on to talk about that more. So there's been a lot of speculation on what exactly is coming. So we're here to set the record straight and also help you understand what this means to you day in and day out with your business. So move to the next slide. I think we want to make sure we explain there's several regulatory bodies that really are coordinating here. So first you can think of, you have the Federal Department of Labor Fiduciary Rule. This is the one that we're talking about today. It was the Obama rule that got killed in court. Much of that actually found its way back into what we're calling the Trump rule, which was confirmed by Biden to go into effect today. And second, you have the SEC. So if you're a rep or advisor, you have your own SEC Reg BI compliance that took effect last summer. And that is related, but not the same thing, nor is it a safe harbor, which is what industry had asked for. There is not a safe harbor under the Department of Labor rule by just saying I comply with Reg BI. And then third is the NEIC state revised suitability best interest regulation, some call Model 275. This was finalized last year about now, and indeed you've seen a number of states, I think we'll show you the chart, but around 22 states that are in the process of getting adopted or have adopted it. So you've got a federal regulatory regime, you've got a self-governing body, the SEC, who regulates investment advisors and reps, and then you've got the NEIC that regulates insurance. So in our case, the fixed and indexed annuities.
Now, Chris, the Reg BI, the NAIC, updated regs, those are all new things. But just to be clear, this DOL rule, this is not the same animal that we saw in 2016, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, this is different than the one that got proposed and ultimately killed by during the Obama administration. So it has some of the same kind of standards and kind of pieces, but it is not the same thing, which means it's not the same form of compliance, as we'll talk about in a little bit here.
Okay. All right.
And move to the next slide. So you see we provided a chart. This is something we can get to you. I encourage you to reach out to your sales director. We'll call you as well. You really need to know what is your new state requirement. So along the way, as the SEC was adopting new best interest standards, the NEIC, the National Association for Insurance Commissioners, was doing the same thing, trying to follow suit and harmonize the standards. And they did that. They did that about a year ago. And so we have two states, Iowa, Arizona, that have put this into effect. But we can get you this chart, more information. But there are 20 additional states where that model is pending or they're pending approval. There will be carrier-specific requirements. We've already seen that and helped a number of our customers with those requirements in those two states, but there will be more to follow. And those who've been in the business for a while, remember suitability's gone through a couple different iterations. This is the new version of it, which is really a best interest standard of care. So just know you have to jump through that hoop as well, and we certainly can help you with that. And then let's just get into then what we're talking about today, which is the new Trump administration PTE, which stands for Prohibited Transaction Exemption 2020-02. So for those of you who've been around for 4 or 5 years, you remember the controversy with what was called the Fiduciary Rule, which is a short way to frame the entire rule and its the hundreds of pages that it entails. So this is the new version of that rule, PTE 2020-02, which refers to a pathway of compliance that you must meet if you want to earn any compensation on qualified money. So first, it covers really all ERISA plans, but also all IRA plans. So all IRAs are covered, and recommendations to roll out of ERISA plans or IRAs. So it's really broad in scope. That does cover annuities, but also life insurance. Most people don't know that. We know we do work with a number of folks, Curtis, certainly, right, that are working with qualified money on life insurance.
Yeah, I mean that's a common sale where you've got somebody taking their RMD to fund an insurance contract. So absolutely.
So those folks, on the call here, make sure you're mindful of that. Talk to your director about it. But the idea here is that you have to have one of these PTEs, a compliance pathway to make it short. Otherwise, you're violating the federal rules, and in theory, you're probably jeopardizing the whole tax deferred status of that plan, of that ERISA or IRA plan. So this is a compliance pathway. There's another one we'll talk about today as well, 8424, which we prefer as a recommended pathway, but we want to make sure we cover this pathway as well. Second, why does this matter? Well, what happened is the Department of Labor broadened and reinterpreted what it means to be a fiduciary. And those who might know about this is called the 5-part test. So back in 1975, eons ago, I think I was born, maybe not you, Curtis, but there were 5 parts to that test. And those included that you needed to provide advice on property or securities. You needed to do it on a regular basis. You needed to have a mutual agreement. The advice needed to be the primary basis for that plan to act. And fifth, that the advice needed to be individualized. So that's the so-called 5-part test. So why does that matter? Well, that matters because before the Obama rule and now before this Trump-era rule, nobody really had to comply with that unless you were functioning as a true investment advice fiduciary and you were giving that advice in connection with your annuities or life insurance. Nobody really used that exemption. Nobody really had to at the time. And so since then, we had the Obama rule, which really broadened the scope of what that means. Because a lot of you would say, well, wait a second, I don't have a mutual agreement. All I do is sell, I'm a transaction-based salesperson. Well, not under the new rule. And so the Obama rule broadened the scope of that. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals bounced it, but the 2020 version of the rule, the Trump-era rule, still kept that broadened interpretation, but took away, in their opinion, some of the most onerous components that were found illegal under the Fifth Circuit, including the best interest contract. The takeaway here is that you really have both a Democrat and Republican Department of Labor that have acknowledged this broadened scope of what it means to be a covered advice provider. And that said, we think basically it's unlikely this rule in itself will probably get bounced. Not to say somebody might challenge it, but really everyone is covered by it. All qualified money is covered, including IRAs. So moving on then to the preamble, final bullet 3 there. So what is that? Well, this is about 100 pages of this rule that gives a broad interpretation to justify this enhanced scope of when you are a covered advice provider. There'll be some news about that. It really is challenging for many people close to this issue because what they've done is it broadened it by saying, well, it really depends upon facts and circumstances between the customer and the producer, the advisor. And, in their estimation, for example, they said, well, the primary basis, one of the 5 parts of the 5-part test can cover really a lot of circumstances. And, it depends on facts and circumstances. So very subjective as opposed to just written rules. And then it's also, maybe I don't have an ongoing relationship like an investment advisor might have. Well, they broadened the scope of that. And they said, well, it's more depends upon, do you intend to have a regular and recurring relationship with that customer? And I got a hard time thinking that really anybody would say that they're not going to go back and want to see their client. So that really broadened the scope there. The other thing is, and for especially folks that work in the rep world, is they made it clear that you cannot disclaim your status as a fiduciary under the standard. And it really depends upon client expectations. So they tightened up that kind of out that some of the rep world was seeking to get some relief on. And they really, in short, I would say that the enforcement by potentially Department of Labor and or litigation is going to be how this gets clarified, is when you're covered or not covered. But the way they wrote this is really, really broad. And what that means is anyone who's working with qualified money really has to jump through these compliance steps. So we're going to talk about this one a little bit more, the 2021, and also the second one, the PT 8424, new, if you will, and how you can use that to comply. So moving on to the next slide there, Curtis,
Well, and I had a question too,
Oh yeah,
Chris,
sure.
because I know for a lot of people, this is kind of, again, this is kind of a surprise that we're even talking about this today, because when the Biden administration came in, they pretty much signaled that they're going to delay a lot of different things. And so, the fact that they didn't come out until Friday of last week to say they were going to delay it, what do you think caused them to say we're just going to let this thing roll?
Yeah, good question. You're right. The White House chief of staff, first day they were, Biden swore in, said that they would delay rules. We instructed the various departments to delay, and uh, ultimately they did not, which is a surprise. And I think the answer is, my opinion, there's just too many other priorities going on. I mean, you see the noise about getting the $15 an hour minimum wage, federal minimum wage, all the work with COVID, climate change, OSHA standards. The secretary nominee, Marty Walsh, is a big labor guy. There's a lot of labor issues that are kind of in front of him. So I think this is an important issue, but it's not a front burner kind of issue. But it's certainly one that's going to be kept on probably the back burner. And that when the time comes, I think we expect the Biden DOL will take action. But for now, we're left with the kind of leftover pieces from the Trump administration.
Okay.
So yeah, talking about compliance pathways. So we have this PT 2020-02, and we'll cover that here just in a little bit, kind of the nuts and bolts. We have the old 8424 compliance, and key point there, preview, is you can't just pull out your forms from 2016, 2017 when that was news. Oh, I got a 8424. That form is different because as we'll explain, the Obama administration actually revised 8424. So really it's complicated, but you really need to use the old 8424, but we've created a compliant form that you can use. And then, you'll hear some noise like, well, if it's a, one-time transaction, I don't even have to comply with this. And while there is some guidance in the couple hundred pages of the rules talking about that, if you read it in its entirety, it's very clear that the DOL really is not providing a pathway forward. So if you in good faith can say that you just had one instance of meeting with a client, pure transaction, never intended, you told them, I will never see you again, I'll never come back and visit with you, I'll never call you, then maybe you could use that. But really, unless you really have no potential intentional recurring relationship, you can't really do that. And so I don't know an advisor who can say that in good faith. And we'll talk a little bit about the Department of Labor's Field Assistance Bulletin that came out in 2018-02. And really what that is, that's actually referenced in the press release from last Friday, is a field assistance bulletin saying, hey, if you want to use the Trump administration PTE, you can, as long as you engage in good faith compliance as best you can, and you jump through the impartial conduct standards of that, then we will probably not go after you for enforcement. So there's a little bit of assurance, not really, and those impartial conduct standards, in theory, are good through December of 2021. And again, you got to show good faith compliance. The problem is that really requires a supervising financial institution to be overseeing all your sales and be able to show that they have policies and procedures whereby your conflicts are mitigated, that you are adhering to a best interest standard of care, and that there's no misleading statements. So while that might be referenced in that press release, the reality is that's not really a pathway forward. It's really, you have to have a firm, as we talk about, that can supervise your activities under the PT 2020-02, or what we're recommending, which is the 8424 pathway. So moving on, Curtis.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to reiterate, I mean, you can't just dust off all, because I mean, even IMS, we built out a whole package for this. You can't just dust off the old forms, BIC agreement and 8424. You've got to use the new paperwork on sales going forward, correct?
You do, yeah. I mean, folks that you do a Google search for 8424, those forms out there are under the old one, the Obama administration after he revised it. So that's not really going to work. It's not designed for what would be the operative 8424 rules. So let me hit here then kind of on the guts of this. And for those who know the Obama era rule, this is going to look very eerily similar other than the best interest contract. But in short, you've really broadened the scope as we talked about. The 5-part test was way broadened to cover pretty much everybody under an ERISA fiduciary standard of care. Some concern people have is, boy, if I'm doing that, then am I going to be held out as a fiduciary, at least under state law? And the answer is maybe. The Department of Labor said, we're not sure. But the reality is if you're offering disclosures to customers that indicate that you're going to act as a fiduciary, at least for Department of Labor purposes, there is some risk that you would be held to that standard of care and potentially get sued as such. So that's one pathway. The other pathway, 8424, does not require that. Does not. Second bullet point is impartial conduct standards. And actually, the guts of short ICS impartial conduct standards are the next 3 bullets: best interest standard, reasonable compensation, and no misleading statements. So those are the 3 key components of having impartial conduct standards. And again, this would be by a supervising entity. Under that reg, there are only 4 entities that can serve as a financial institution. Those include insurance company, which I don't know of any that have agreed to do so, a bank, and folks on this call probably aren't generally employed by banks, a broker dealer, or an RIA. Now, RIAs, I don't know if they're supervising fixed indexed annuities, at least for purposes of this compliance. Some broker dealers, particularly those who are supervising fixed indexed annuities, may very well ultimately try to comply with this 2020-02 exemption because they're doing much of the same stuff under that SEC Reg BI. However, this is different. There are additional requirements. There's some things I know broker-dealer compliance officers were not real interested in doing. For example, the sign off by a compliance officer and some other requirements. So I would tell you, if you're a rep with a broker-dealer, talk to your compliance department. Are you using the 2020-02 version for my life insurance annuities? I haven't heard of one that is, and some of this is because it's happened so quickly. But even time goes by, I think a lot of them are going to coalesce around our second pathway we'll talk about, the 8424. So moving on there, Curtis, the next page, other components of it is you do have to acknowledge you're a fiduciary. So that's a different standard of care under state law, and you can be held accountable to that. So I think that's something that concerns folks that are looking to use that pathway. Next, there needs to be detailed policies and procedures that would help describe how you are getting supervised. Again, this is going to be by one of those 4 financial institutions that could be developing those policies, procedures, probably has a whole staff of people that would be overseeing those sales and so forth and complying with the fiduciary rule. Conflict mitigation is really around ensuring that you don't have certain financial incentives in place that would cause you to violate your fiduciary standard of care. So notably, one of those that's been a lot of talk is differentiated comp. So, Curtis, we certainly have annuities, life insurance. They don't all pay the same comp, do they?
No, not at all.
So, I think those folks that were wanting to jump through this pathway would have to look real hard and understand, is there a basis for a differentiated comp? So, a 10-year fixed indexed annuity, another carrier has one. Are they different comp? Is there a legitimate basis to have differentiated comp? And I think many broker dealers that are supervising, I think, have had to jump through those hoops and indeed do regulate comp. And then we have the documentation and record keeping under this 2020 version. So that's a document. You have to document the specific reason why this recommendation was in their best interest. This is similar to Reg BI. It's also similar to the Model 275 on the state side insurance. But really you got to describe, why is it I picked this? You got to tell almost like a narrative story, what you looked at, and then be prepared to talk about the why you chose, if you are an investment advisor, for example, you chose the fee version versus the commission version. That's specifically described in this rule. And you have to keep this for 6 years, which we'll talk about. We have a way to be your record keeper for the return documentation. And then there's a retrospective review. I won't get into details about that, Curtis, but an officer of that supervising financial institution would need to do a sign off and review of the compliance of everything and be prepared to kind of self-identify any problems. So that's a pretty onerous standard, right, Curtis? And
Well, yeah, just listening to you describe everything, and you're plugged into this more than most people, but I mean, who are you hearing would actually use this as a path to compliance?
that's a good question. Some of this I think is kind of fresh on everybody. I think large broker dealers, banks, perhaps somebody, they have a limited menu of products and highly supervised, and there's a lot of controls in place. For most of the people that are on this webinar, we got 700. The folks that we work with day in and day out, independent advisors, largely I don't see at this time a financial institution be prepared to step up and do that. Now, this is a fluid situation, which means we could get 6 months from now, we could get to the end of the year, and the DOL could say, well, we're actually going to propose something new. And really maybe have to jump through something that looks like this 2020-02 version. But for now, right now, you gotta find a compliance pathway. We'll talk about the next one now, but I just don't see many using this in the short term.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
So we also have the second pathway, which, as we'll share, we highly recommend as a viable pathway, which is PTE, again, prohibited transaction exemption, which you got to have in order to get paid any compensation, 8424. And on the left there is an excerpt from the December release in the Federal Register, which says it's important to note that insurance and annuity products can also continue to be recommended and sold under the existing exemption for insurance transactions, PTE 8424. So actually that did give us some comfort when that rule, that came out, and they made clear that you can use that pathway. And on the right there is the Federal Register from February of 2006, which is actually the rule. The PT 8424 rule. It's complicated, but it refers to a 1984 rule, but that is a screenshot of the actual rule that you can use for 8424. So moving on there, Curtis, what I wanted to hit are the highlights of that rule, and we'll show you a sample of a disclosure form that would accomplish the compliance there. And I think since I'm going to speak a lot less, you're going to realize this is a lot easier to comply. So the heart of this is it's really a disclosure-based regime, whereas the other one has a lot of standards of conduct and helping yourself to a fiduciary and so forth. Here, it's really based upon disclosure, and then again, this is available at this time, and you'll see the disclosure on the next page. The first thing you need to do is disclose your relationship. Basically, I'm an agent, I'm an advisor, I'm contracted to work with an insurance company that I'm recommending, and if you have any limitations in that regard. So most of you are working for multiple insurance companies. If you're captive, you probably have to disclose that you're captive, but most of you work for multiple companies, and as you see in the sample disclosure, it would say that you do work for multiple companies. The second piece is that you need to have, quote, reasonable sales commissions, fees, and other consideration. So reasonableness is not defined. Our good regulators didn't really go to define what does that mean. If you look at what most are talking about there, is it needs to be reasonable in light of the marketplace. So for the marketplace, for what you're recommending, say annuities, or what you recommended given the marketplace as a whole, and also the complexity and how much work and kind of involvement the sale would take, are factors that go into reasonableness of the commissions or fees that you're going to earn. The third is that you have to disclose that percentage of compensation earned for first year and succeeding years. So that needs to be disclosed to the customer as a percentage. And then you need to describe any charges, fees, penalties, adjustments under the annuity or life insurance plan. And so you'll see that as a reference to the many, many disclosures and the contract itself that describes how the product works. So moving on to the next page there, Curtis, we have a sample here. And again, we'll be following up with you. I think we'll launch a polling question later if you'd like to see our sample disclosure form that you can use. And we encourage you to take a look at it, and if you need to modify it for your needs. But this one is a functioning 8424 disclosure form. we've made available to any of our customers here. And carriers we expect are going to have their own. We're talking to some of the lawyers at various carriers, kind of pulling their hair out right now because this came real quick at them. But I think many of them are working on their own disclosure forms and may NIGO business, not in good order it, if you don't have that return. So expect to see that. We're on top of it. We'll keep you posted if there's any carrier specific requirements, if and when that comes. But this is a form that we certainly will make available to you, and we'll be following up with you on. But it has those guts of it. So I mentioned relationship of the agent to the insurance company. Identifies that you function, you earn commissions or fees if you're function as a fee-based advisor selling a fee annuity, and you need to disclose how much. So what's your first year? If you have any trailer commissions or additional fees that you're earning, and at anniversary, you would need to disclose that. And then there's a reference to the contract charges and adjustments. So we've created a language that would cover all the different products that you would be selling. Premium bonus, recapture charges, surrender charges, premium, state premium taxes, fees, all that is really covered by there. And then there's acknowledgement. So technically speaking, this is actually signed by the IRA owner, or if you're working with a 401k or 403b plan fiduciary, they would sign and date it, and they need to get that form back, and you keep it in your files, the agent or the advisor's file. You need to keep it. You can provide a copy if you want to the consumer, but really the onus is on you to have that in there. So you kind of say, well, what does that matter? What if you didn't get it? What would happen? Well, as I kicked off at the beginning, that could jeopardize the tax qualified status of their plan. So they've made that clear in the pronouncements that if you don't have an exemption, you're potentially jeopardizing their tax qualified status, if there's potential excise taxes as well. And you, as the person who recommended it, they're going to be on the hook ultimately by that advisor. So the IRA owner here is really the one who's signing off kind of on their own compliance for the IRA plan or the ERISA plan, if it's in the case of a plan fiduciary, and they have to have all this information in order to kind of sign off on it. But the onus is on you as an agent advisor to that plan. So moving on there. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's probably a good point to make on this. And I know you mentioned it a couple of slides ago, but IMS has the capacity and will house that completed form as well. So we can keep that, attach it to the client file. And so you can use us as that backup to make sure that that form is not lost. So on any business that you're doing with us, yeah.
So we can load it onto, a lot of you are using Firelight. We have a means to store that here. Carriers may have their own forms, may require it, may not. Some carriers may not even want this form back. So, we have a way to be your repository. We got predictions. So, a lot of say, well, what's going to happen? I mean, this is moving kind of fast. You do need to comply today as compliance date under that new rule. And so there's really three things here I want to talk about. First, on the left there, it's Capitol building. And so what could happen is we could get legislation. This is a rule, but the agency can really only do what's authorized by legislation that's passed. And so there is a possibility of some legislation that would modify or create authority for the Department of Labor to, again, modify its rules. We'll see. I personally am a little skeptical that'll happen in 2021 because of obviously the priorities with COVID and just some other things that are more important at this time. We got to get our economy back on track and get COVID under control. So wouldn't lose sight of that, but 2021 probably unlikely. The second one is that's the Marty Walsh right there in the middle, and so he is the Department of Labor Secretary nominee. Marty Walsh. He's a former Boston mayor, kind of an old-fashioned labor Democrat, former president of a union and trade councils. Seen as a progressive though, and I think many believe that ultimately now he will get nominated or approved by the Senate now. That's pending, given the impeachment trial is now concluded. That'll probably get pushed forward and voted on and approved by the Senate, but he's expected to get approved. And whether it's a priority, I guess, is the question. So as I mentioned, there's other things on the docket there, the $15 an hour federal minimum wage, COVID. But he certainly, and his staff, which he's retained a lot of the Obama staff, the staffers, career folks are all there. They remember the Obama rule. Heck, they remember the 2010 rule. Many of them they created. And so there's a lot of bench strength there, some really experienced staffers. So I think it's going to depend upon, Marty Walsh there, is this going to be a priority issue or not? They are concerned about getting sued and losing. And that never looks good when you pass a rule, you spend a couple of years, you end up losing, and they're going to have to jump through some hoops with that Fifth Circuit decision. However, I do expect there'll be some more news on this. And then the last branch there is that's the U.S. Supreme Court, the bottom right there. As I mentioned, that Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals bounced the rule across the country and killed the rule in total. So they really had to hit the reset button on it. And this rule, could it end up back in court? It could. I'm not hearing any big trades making noise about that yet. I think a more onerous next version certainly could be challenged back in court. And that's the other branch that I think could affect this rule. But at this time, you have the 2020 version of the rule that is effective. It is an option. I don't know of really many people saying they're going to use it. Check with your broker, dealer, or bank, though, maybe. And 8424 is really the pathway that we're highly recommending. We got that sample form, and that seems like the very, very viable pathway forward for any of your qualified money sales. So with that, Curtis, I'm going to pass it back to you. I know we had a lot to cover today, and I appreciate everybody's interest on this, and certainly want to, again, got your back. We're an advocate for you. Make sure we're getting you the latest and greatest compliance information and what you can do to make sure that you can continue to be working with your clients.
Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time today, and I know we covered a lot of information today. So I'm gonna first off, I'm gonna launch a poll here. If you would like to get that 8424 form, again, as Chris had mentioned, we've gone through and we've vetted that, so we do have that available. What I would reiterate is that it is critically important that when you're utilizing this, that you're filling it out correctly for your records. And so our sales directors, it's important that you speak with them before using it. So with this poll, if you want to receive it, we'll go ahead and note that. We'll have our sales directors reaching out to you. We also have hundreds of advisors on this call today. So I know some of you will want to call in. We want you to, but also be patient with us because we're going to try and get to everybody. There's a couple more line items that we want to go through as well. So let me close that down. In addition, Chris, you covered the NAIC updated regs. We've got a wealth of information and can help you with that as well over here. So not just with the DOL compliance, but as well as if you're in a state impacted by the updated NAIC regs. Also, we are going to be doing another webinar at noon Central on Wednesday of next week. You will be seeing some emails about that. But Chris, I think to the point that you've driven home, this is kind of a fluid situation. We're going to be seeing updates from carriers, et cetera, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. As always, for those of you that work with us, you know we've got a top-class annuity sales team. So not just making sure that you remain compliant, but also making sure that you've got everything you need to be able to transact sales. I also want to mention, I'm going to put this up here. We do a lot of posts from a social media standpoint. So some of you maybe even saw that we were going to be doing this webinar on social media. Like and follow us. It's a great way to, in addition to the email and the calls that we do, to see what's going on with the Department of Labor, as well as different promotions and things that we have going on over here at IMES. And so I know that we're coming up on the top of the hour. So our phone number, 800-255-5055. Give us a call with the questions that you have. Again, we want to make sure that you're transacting business compliantly and that you have everything that you need to make sure that you're staying compliant. And again, be on the lookout this week. We're going to be doing another webinar on this on Wednesday at noon Central Time next week. And Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time today, and you're available as well. So if anybody would like to talk to him, Chris is available as well, along with the rest of our sales team. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to be on the call with us today. Chris, did you have any last thoughts before we get off here?
No, just yeah, sure thing. Absolutely, be happy to be fielding calls. I know we're getting a lot. I mean, given the volume here, and that I think we're the only firm that has anything on the 8424. So you're going to want that. And happy to help you. Appreciate everybody's opportunity to earn your business and work with your annuity and life insurance needs.
Absolutely. Appreciate the time, Chris. Appreciate everybody being on here. And like I said, we are going to be talking to everybody. So we're here to support your business and make sure this goes very, very smooth. So appreciate the time today. Thank you.